Welcome back to the podcast. Today, Tim and I are talking about motivation and why it doesn't work. So, if you have goals in your life, if you have big things or even little things that you want to get done, I'm here today to talk to you about why motivation doesn't matter.
So I feel like the title of this episode, which probably is yet to be determined, is going to be like a bait and switch situation.
What do you mean? B?
Like we're going to say it's one thing and mentally you're thinking that and you probably have your entire life and then you're about ready to tell us that it's exactly the opposite of that. Is that kind of where this is going?
Maybe. We'll see. I mean, think about when you have goals for yourself. Think about the bigger goals in your life, you personally, Tim.
Okay.
And maybe one that it's not a goal for today. Maybe it's a goal for a month from now, 2 months from now, 3 months from now. You've had them. I know you've had them with sport. Maybe you've had them with things that you're doing in the workplace. Are you always motivated to work on the tasks to reach your goals?
Well, that's a different question, right? Like am I always motivated?
Well, are you
No.
mostly,
But
yeah,
but do
motivated?
I need to be motivated maybe by an external force? That's the when I hear this conversation, that's what I'm thinking, which is why I think the title is gonna be very interesting.
Yeah. The title of this episode, which we have not named yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think it was like, okay, you have to be motivated to go towards this goal, whatever it is, and sometimes you can internally motivate yourself, and sometimes you need an external motivator, right?
Right, and we know that motivation, there are extra reasons why we wanna get things done, so we are motivated by the extrinsic, which is the outside, so maybe it's, we're motivated by the idea of money, motivated by the idea of, a medal, we're motivated by the idea of, I don't know, getting into a relationship with someone. Those are external motivating factors
Yeah.
which make us go towards our goals. And then there's the intrinsic of just knowing that I was able to complete something. It's what it does for me and my ego on the inside. Those are the intrinsic motivators that have us going after things. So you're talking about the extrinsic motivators when you think about yourself in the past, right?
I think so. I mean, I'm also thinking like, okay, I'm also motivated by the maybe by the fear of failure, right?
So that I think would is more of an intrinsic
Yeah.
motivator,
Yeah.
right? That's your ego.
Right.
I just cannot fail. I will not fail. I can't bear it. I will not be able to stand myself if air quote fail.
Right.
Right, right. Okay, so you know that has diminishing returns, though. I mean, when you have longer goals, especially, that's going to fade. What you're saying to me sitting here today on this morning that we're recording about I need to not fail. This is how it's, going to look to me, my ego. You may not feel so strongly about that 2 weeks from now, a month from now, 3 months from now. That starts to fade like, "Oh, this is getting really hard." I mean, yeah, I said I wanted to complete that Ironman, but Jesus, training is difficult and, okay. We start to sort of fudge. We sort of start to, give ourselves excuses for, why we blew off that swim or we blew off that long bike ride. Well, we start to make excuses inside ourselves because the motivation is fading. Even the intrinsic motivators, which are powerful for a lot of people, can start to fade. So that's why this is an important episode. And I wanted to talk about it. We've talked about it before on the podcast, but it's one that does bear repeating. I mean, it is so important for when we have goals, no matter what those goals are in our life, that we do not rely on our motivation. And I see this every day. I see it with coaching clients that, many people come to in the beginning motivated to want to make changes, but then they soon see, oh, this is hard. Oh, okay. And, a lot of people are just, let's go, let's get this done. But there's also people, and I'm not going to lie, myself included. I've been in coaching for years. It gets hard because the motivation of why I signed up in the beginning for life coaching or business coaching, it's like, oh gosh, okay, well, I'm tired today. I didn't get great sleep last night. I got family coming in town and I still have to do this or that, whatever like my routines are or whatever it is I said I would do to reach my goals. My life coach, my business coach is really the person that just holding me accountable They say, all right, you said you wanted this. I'm here to hold you accountable and to talk to you about and remind you of why you said you wanted this and to push you, but you got to do it. And at the end, they're your goals, not mine. Like, okay, 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 but that's why I want to talk about it again because it's a hard one.
It is a hard one. And I mean, I think you can also just take a step back and just think about like, all right, it's the constant debate between the glass is half empty versus half full, right? Like you approach something with the vision of success or the joy of success versus the fear of what would it be like if you fail, right?
Right.
Just as a human, just as a person. Like
That's intrinsic of
yeah.
value. So if you can visualize for your future, oh geez, what if this doesn't work? That's enough to put a fire under your butt
Mhm.
to motivate you to keep going. And that has value.
Yeah.
That is valuable.
Yeah.
There's research behind why motivation doesn't work. I mean, the shortcomings of why motivation doesn't work is that there's only temporary boosts. You get boosted temporarily. When I first signed up for that race, I'm motivated. I'm like, yes, it's a temporary boost of what it's going to look like on the outside. I'm going to get fitter. It's going to be so great. It's like, what is it the kids talk about? A main character syndrome. That's so funny. That's just something that it's something I didn't know about until, well, last summer. Marissa and Tyler were talking about main character syndrome. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'd never heard that term before.
Main character
Yeah. So main
syndrome.
character syndrome is, your ego. It's like me envisioning myself running through the finish line of a 10K. Main character syndrome. Like it's all about me. Well, that's a motivator to get you to get up and to train, to do all those 3, 5, 6, maybe 7 mile runs because you got this big 10K coming up, right? Or you have this presentation, this pitch you have to do because you're very motivated to get this account because okay, now you got $100,000 in your account if you get this deal, right? But that can wane as time goes by. It's just a temporary boost. That's why we know motivation doesn't work. There's also a plateau effect.
Hmm.
Um, so these are all, and I'm looking right now at the studies that came up when I was doing my research on this. There's a lot of research around why motivation doesn't work, and I'm not really sure what's going on right now. Did you see that? This happened on the podcast with Dana
Looking at
Carvey and David Spade, who I love, my SNL favorite guys. Did you see that? Did you just see that? If those who are not watching, you're listening, you're probably wondering what I'm talking about. There
I'm
must be a
wondering what
setting.
you're
Did
talking
you see
about.
the
No.
thumbs up just came up on the screen?
No.
And they were talking about it last week, and they're like, "What is going on right now?" with one of their guests, and the same thing just happened right now with us. A big thumbs up came up.
He's
Anyways, people, I wasn't summing upping you right now
AI
this
is
very
giving you
moment.
a thumbs up on your
I just looked at the camera and it's
execution of this.
a thumbs up came up. Whatever. That was really weird. Okay, so, you know, there's I was talking about the research of why people can be motivated. So there's a self-regulation and power. The research behind that is from Baumeister in 1998. He did research on self-regulation and willpower, and it shows that self-control is a limiting resource. Continuous resilience on willpower to stay motivated can lead to ego depletion. It's called ego depletion, where an individual's ability to self-regulate, it diminishes over time. We just like, and I just mentioned it earlier, like I'm not that motivated anymore because it's difficult to maintain that regulation over time, especially over months, to stay motivated to get something done. So what will happen for most of us? It falls off. We just we can flop. I know. I've done it. You've done it, right?
I mean, that's a pattern that you could make an argument happens far more than it doesn't, right? Like throughout life, like
Yes.
you go through these phases of like, "Ooh, I'm motivated to do this or this," make a change, whether I'm dropping something or adding something in my lifestyle, and it's like you do your darndest to make that happen, and then what happens? Then
Uh,
you start to fade away,
it's
and it comes
raining outside.
back.
I'm tired. No one cares anyway.
Yeah.
Why am I doing
This is like
this?
a roller coaster ride for your entire life, basically.
Well, I really feel it more than in sport. I have felt it in the world of entrepreneurship. I have
Totally.
felt it like, why? What's the point? Why am I doing this? I'm not motivated today. My energy is low. We just have days when our energy is low and we're depleted. And it's like, I don't feel like I don't feel like it, you know? And so there's, like I always say in the podcast, probably every episode at this point, there's no perfection here. And that you and I go through this in the same way that many other people go through it. I'm here to teach you the skills of how I move through this because I may just have more skills than you, the listener or the watcher has, just because I've learned it, because this is my field and it's something that I've developed knowledge around. And it does not mean that you and I are really any better in many ways because we fall through too, but we get back
Totally.
up, we dust it, we fall down, we brush the knees off, the dust off from our knees, and we keep on going
Yeah.
because, motivation is a hard one. So, all that to say, I mean, there's one other study that I remember, and I remember this in college, Albert Bandura, who I loved. And this study, I mean, this is something, excuse me, that we still go back to. And this study came out in 1977. He had a social learning theory that emphasized the role of observational learning in social context and motivation. So, what it says is that individuals are influenced by the behavior and attitudes of those around them. So, social learning theory is that's why it's so important. Say, I know for me, and when this waned, it really affected me. The importance of being in a triathlon group, the importance of, and as we got more competitive, as I got more competitive, and doing my own individual training, I was not able to always swim, bike, and run with other people because I had a very specific training plan and it became lonely, and I really missed my triathlon group that you were running. I really missed those Saturday morning group rides because, that there were years when I wasn't specifically training for a race and I didn't have as big a goals. I was still training to race, but I wanted to have more of a fun summer. This is more like 15 to 20 years ago. And the enjoyment was that it's 6 AM on a Saturday morning and we're laughing, this camaraderie, and
Right.
we're all out there together, way out on those country roads, and sometimes you're talking, sometimes you're not, but you're all together. There was a lot to that, and that kept me motivated to stay in training. And then I had to double down on why I was doing this, why I was training, why I was wanting to compete in triathlon, because once I got this is 3 coaches in, I got really serious about wanting to be competitive. All of a sudden, it got lonely. And then I needed to go from external motivators to internal motivators. And that's where I employed, all right, what's it going to feel like on the morning of the race? Remember why you're doing this. And for me, it was, ego. For me, it was getting that medal. For me, it was moving up the rankings, the national rankings. For me, it was moving up in the Ironman. They have their own list of rankings, Ironman brand, which is really the most powerful and popular brand in the world. Moving up the ranking with Ironman, moving up in my age group. That was the most important thing to me was being top 10% in my age group. So that was the internal motivators for why I kept doing what I was doing when I lost the external motivators of being with my people, right?
Yeah, totally.
Albert Bandura, I love that, and it really it's so, so true, and you think about, when there's a lack of a supportive social environment, it really can undermine a person's motivation. So you regardless of your personal drive, so you gotta employ something else. You gotta go from the extrinsic into the intrinsic for quite a bit. But the whole point of this episode today is talk about why motivation doesn't work because the extrinsic falls off. I can almost guarantee you what's going to happen is the intrinsic is going to fall off. You're gonna, like we've been talking about, you're gonna have moments, hours, days, weeks, months when you're like, this sucks. And I even have support for this, but this sucks because this is really, really hard and I don't want to do it anymore.
Yeah. And
Okay.
this applies. I mean, this is more than we're talking a little bit about athletics, but like, if you're in sales, right? You're a salesperson and you're always on that game of chase, right?
Yeah.
And that's your win when you hit that sale, when you pull that sale in and then you close it, right?
Right.
If you were a student, you're always on that game of like, I need to study because I need to take this
The
test,
grades. Right.
which translates into my grade, which then translates into my potential internship, which translates into my potential career. So
If
there's
you're
the
if you're college bound.
yeah, but
Right.
but even if you're not, like if let's say you're gonna go into the trades, there's still check boxes along the way
Yeah.
that, like, you need to you need to not fail at those, right? Because if you do, that changes the trajectory a bit of where you're going and maybe the timing of how you're gonna get there.
Yeah.
You can apply this almost to anything really, to be quite honest,
Yeah.
which is interesting.
So, you think about for those who are in high school or those who have kids in high school or college kids or graduate school, thinking about like law school, medical school, why are you motivated? Let me go back. Are you motivated? And if you are, why are you motivated? It's the why. What is your why? And you often have to go back to what is my why? What is my why? Why am I doing this?
Yeah.
Go back to the original reason why you set out to apply to graduate school and now you want to be in graduate school. Why? Well, because I want to get my PhD. I want to get my MD, my JD. I want to I want to start a startup. I'm going to do this thing. That's why I'm working my ass off and working 7 days a week and, all these crazy hours because my goal is to, start this company and make 8 figures, and it's hard. So, when it's hard and you don't feel like it on a Saturday or Sunday now, with a caveat that we all need breaks, you can't keep going day in and day out, you're going to burn out, and I can almost guarantee you will fail. You must take breaks. You must take breaks. Okay, but say, look, you took a weekend off and that was really great and refreshing, and you were, went to the beach or you just hung around and you did a staycation, but you walked away from this startup that you want to get going. Now it's Monday morning and you're not motivated. What is the reason why you're doing it? Why? Really ask yourself, why am I doing this? Why am I here right now, sitting behind this desk doing this job?
Yeah.
Only you, the listener or the watcher, can answer that for yourself. Only you. You ought to come up with a list of why you're here. And it can be very telling because if you can't come up with 5 reasons why you're there, or maybe 2 big reasons, then I would encourage you to really spend some time exploring that within yourself.
And if you really think about
That's some
this.
soul searching.
Yeah.
And we're talking about work really right now, but
Yeah.
that's some soul searching with work goals.
Yeah. But I think for any of it, it's like the sad part is, I guess, is it sad or is it just life? Like, so you're going after whatever this goal is. Well, there's gonna be another goal to go after that. Right? Like you're never really off the hamster wheel. You're always on a game of chase throughout life of like, okay, there's this chase, there's hopeful success for you, and then now we're on the chase for that next thing. What's
Right.
the and that's just in no matter what avenue or venue of your life you're talking about, that's just how it goes. So you have to mentally be okay with that. Like it's like this, it's just like we always say, it's like this.
Yeah.
Chase, win, chase, win, chase, win, fail, maybe, chase again.
It's important to take breaks. We talked about it in, I think it's last week's episode. We talked about stress adaptation and how that's how we grow is we have to stress ourselves and then we adapt. And I talked a lot about like the musculoskeletal system. I use the analogy of actually working out and building your muscles. You have to stress your body. You have to, stress your muscles. So you do feel a little bit of pain, but that's how they adapt. It hurts a little bit. So I shouldn't say hurts. There's soreness, and then there's growth, right? Because your muscles have adapted to what it is that you did to it. It's the same thing in the workplace. I mean, it's stress, it's adaptation, and out of adaptation comes growth. And it's the same thing, it comes in with motivation because you're not always going to feel motivated to go after those big, hairy, audacious goals that you said you wanted a year ago. Because now here it is in the doldrums of, a Tuesday in July or a Tuesday in, October. And you're like, I don't feel like it anymore because it's really hard. Yeah, it's going to get hard.
Yeah.
You know, I think that we're going to move into this, but I'm going to give you the practical implications for what I think you need to be doing in order to go after your goals. Because all this episode is really to say is that motivation is wonderful, but it's going to stop at some point, or it's going to diminish, or it's going to go away. And so I'm not as concerned that my clients stay motivated. I'm not as concerned that, when they say to me, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months in, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm like, well, that doesn't matter. And I say to them, like, I'm not, of course, my very nice way, I don't really care that you're not motivated. You need to stay consistent. And that's how you're going to reach your goals. That's how it's going to work.
Right.
Stay consistent. It's not about motivation. And that's how you're going to achieve what it is you set out that you said you wanted to achieve in the beginning.
Right. Do you I'm thinking in the workplace, we do this, like, do you with your clients, do you give them, because there will be a moment of achieving the goal, like, do you give them time to pause and celebrate it? Like, you
Absolutely.
made it, you
Yes.
did it, all that effort, all that hard work,
Absolutely.
so there has to be a little moment of, like, "Nice job, take a breath, enjoy the moment," right?
High achievers tend to be people who do not sit on their laurels for very long and take in the moment. And I am there to remind them, okay, let's slow down. Do you hear what you just told me? Do you hear that you just told me you got this big account? After all of these pitches, you finally got it. Do you hear that you just got a 4.0 this semester, that you got all A's? Do you Are you aware of how hard that has been for you?
Right,
This is with like my college kids or my graduate school clients. I mean, because it's on to the next, it's on to the next, it's on the next. And I'm guilty of it too. I remember, a business coach, well, actually a couple business coaches saying to me, okay, can you just stop for a second? And can we just revel in the moment that you just were on Fox News? I mean, okay. And I'm like, oh, what's next? And they do the same with me, settle. You just gave a talk at Amazon. Kind of a big deal, kind of a big deal. And right, it is important to slow down,
yeah,
sit back, and just bask in the moment. Because I think that for many people, and this is me, it's like, well, I got to keep going because I need to there's momentum now, and I want to keep going with the momentum because now I need to go on to the next big thing. And yes, it's okay. I want to go on to the next big thing. And it's important to appreciate what I have done and what you, the listener, the watcher, have done, what you have done, where you have been. Just be in this moment, be in the present moment, sit in it. Now, this is the time when I would say we talk a lot about sitting in, get comfortable being uncomfortable and sitting in uncomfortable feelings. And I talk about this with not just coaching clients, but with therapy clients, sitting in the discomfort of what's coming up for you, what's percolating to the surface. And this is very kind of a big thing in psychodynamic theory, working on unresolved issues, childhood issues, trauma with therapy clients. But this is one time where it's important in coaching to sit with the good stuff. And I'll do this with therapy clients too. Now I don't want you to sit in discomfort. Now we're sitting in the good stuff that comes up.
right,
Where do you feel that?
yeah,
Where do you feel the good stuff? Where do you feel the happiness? Where do you feel the satisfaction? You know, sit in that. Have an ego about it. Be proud of yourself. Smile. Just have joy
right,
around, look at what you did. We spent a lot of time talking about and working out how hard it is and doing the big stuff. And then when it happens, okay, sit in this.
right,
Tomorrow's a new day. You're going to get going to the bigger stuff, but today sit in this. That's really important.
yeah.
And I have to do it myself.
I think a good example of that is, and we've all seen this, like there's a sports team that like goes throughout their season, they fight, and they get to the moment where they win it all,
Yeah.
right? And the guy comes up and puts a microphone in their
You're
face.
talking about the Super Bowl?
It could be anything. Could be baseball, could be it's all of it. I mean,
Yeah.
you see it,
Yeah.
and they'll ask him a couple of questions like, "How do you feel?" And "Who do you want to thank?" And all those questions, and then instantly they go to, "So, what do you think about next year? Like, how's the offseason?" And like, they
Yeah.
don't even give
Yeah.
that person
Yeah.
the space to like just
Can I
enjoy
just
it.
be in this moment right
Yeah,
now with the streamers all above my head
yeah,
and everybody's
yeah.
like, popping champagne?
Right.
Can we just sit for a minute and enjoy this moment? That's why I loved when the Cubs won in 16, the Cubs won the World Series and we were all crying. Bill Murray was in the locker room with the guys, and who else was in there? What's his name from, oh my gosh, y'all are gonna kill me. Pearl Jam. He's a huge Cubs fan. Eddie
Oh,
Vedder.
okay.
Wasn't Eddie Vedder there?
Yeah.
And Bill Murray was so funny because he was, who is it that he was with? And they were like popping champagne, I think in each other's faces. They were drinking from the bottle, and it was just reveling with the team, the management and the players and the owners just reveling in the moment of having won the World Series.
Yeah.
And I don't remember the news anchors, the correspondents at that time asking the team what was next. I mean, they were just it was a local footage in Chicago, but they were just getting footage of the team in the locker room just going crazy,
Yeah.
just popping champagne everywhere. They were soaking wet, whooping it up, laughing, slaps on the back. And that was just this wonderful moment of watching this team over 100 years had been since they'd won the World Series.
That was a little bit of a unique situation, I think,
Yeah,
right? Like,
and
that
there's
franchise, like, just been down in the dumps for decades and decades.
well, a century,
Yeah,
right? And
yeah,
and and nothing about next year. It's
yeah,
all about let's be in this moment. But I get what you're saying. We you do see that where it's like, well, what's next? After not thinking about the Super Bowl for some reason, because maybe I've seen this, at the Super Bowl celebration. How next year or soon after there's that
yeah.
question. It's like, don't
Are
ask that
are you gonna
question.
be able to come back? Can you repeat next year? Like,
Or
they're
the
already
Bulls.
asking
Yeah,
that
stop
question.
asking
It's
them
like,
that. Let
stop
them
it.
let them be in the moment, right. And so it's so important to take that moment. Well, because those athletes, they know the work they've done to get there. Those athletes are probably thinking the way you and are right now of, "Wait a minute, settle down," because they're trained. They have trainers, they have performance mindset coaches who've taught them that you take the good stuff when it comes and you revel in it and you sit in it.
Right.
Tomorrow's another day. Today, we celebrate.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that us everyday regular people who have big goals, we got to learn from them because we're not so great at that.
True, super
Right.
true. I
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's important to me that the supplements I take are of the highest quality. And that's why for 5 years, I've been drinking AG1. Unlike many supplement brands, AG1 conducts relentless testing to set the standard for purity and potency. I know I can trust what's in every scoop of AG1 because it's tested for 950 contaminants and banned substances, while the industry standard typically only tests for 10. Taking care of my health shouldn't be complicated, and AG1 simplifies this by covering my nutritional basis and setting myself up for success in just 60 seconds. AG1's ingredients are heavily researched for efficacy and quality, and I love that every scoop also includes prebiotics, probiotics, and digestive enzymes for gut support. So if you want to replace your multivitamin and more, start with AG1. Try AG1 and get a free 1 year supply of vitamin D3 plus K2 and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first subscription at drinkag1.com/Anna. That's drinkag1.com/Anna. Check it out. You will not regret it.
Agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's go into some of the implications for if I'm going to say to you, motivation doesn't work. Well, what does work? You'd say, okay, Anna, fine. You've been talking about this. Now, then tell me what does work because I thought it really was about motivation to reach my goals. So I got 5 tips for you, and you may have heard them on other podcasts, um, episodes that we've done, but I'm going to talk about it again and really get out a pen and paper and write. See, there goes, look at it. Look. Sorry, people. But the thumbs up just came up on my hand again. That's so weird. Okay.
It's like a pat in the back
There's something strange going on here.
mid podcast episode recording.
Because
Nice
the
job.
podcast platform's like, sure, thumbs up, Anna, go ahead.
You're doing a great job. I'm gonna motivate you a little bit
Right.
more. Thumbs
Right.
up for you.
Okay. Number one, structured planning. You got to plan for what it is you're going after. What are your goals? Structured planning. All right. Develop a detailed action plan and strategies to navigate those obstacles that are going to come up for you. Okay. So get an action plan together. What are you going to do? Write it down. It's not enough for you to just listen to this. It's not enough for you to think that you remember it because you will not remember what I'm saying right now. I guarantee it 100%. You will not remember what I'm saying to you right now. You got to write it down. Get a journal, go get a piece of paper, go get a notebook. It doesn't matter what it is, but write this down and keep it near you. Put it by your desk, put it by your bedside table, put it somewhere where you can go back to it and refer to it, all right? but you got to write these things down. I would do this, right? I think, I'll remember that. You won't remember it. There's just no way your
Yeah.
mind is going to be able to remember it. So,
Yeah.
structured planning is number one. Get a detailed action plan, go write it down so you can go back and refer to it. Number two, I'm going to say this, work on your habits. Okay. Habit formation, developing routines that is going to support your goal directed behavior. Okay. You got action steps. Now you got to get those habits in place. So, habit stacking is important. That's, um, gosh, I have this book right here. That's James Clear, Atomic Habits. Great book. Talks all about the importance of habits and habit stacking in your life when you're going after big things. Okay. So get those habits going. All right. And I've talked about that in other episodes, so I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail here. Support systems. You got to have support systems in place. If you've got big goals, you got to tell people. You got to let the people around you that you have psychological safety with, that you care about, but care about you and care about your goals. You got to get a support system in place. Okay. So, social support and environmental support. So go to the library, go to, your home office, go to a place at work, when you're working on something that you get quiet and or maybe you don't need quiet. Maybe you do need a little bit of noise. Some people like to go to Panera or Starbucks because that quiet, that kind of that white noise in the background helps them. But you know for yourself what works. So work on your environment to support you and work on the people in your life that will support you and remind you of what you said you were going to do, remind you of your goals because you need that on those mornings, those afternoons, those evenings when you don't have any motivation. You're like, I'm done. Okay, well, this is not about if you're motivated right now. This is about you staying consistent. So you need that person to kind of put their figuratively speaking or you know, really speaking, put their hand on your shoulder and say, "No, keep going. You got this. You got this." Okay? Self-reflection is really important, number 4. So, just regularly assessing and adjusting your goals and strategies. Sometimes, and this happens, maybe the goal that you set for yourself wasn't a realistic one. Sometimes that's why your support system can come in. That's why coaching is really important here because your coaches, the people who know you, um, business coaches, life coaches can say, I don't know if that's realistic for you right now. That might be something you can do in 2 or 3 years. I think we need to bring those goals down and let's get back. Let's chop off the top part of it and let's work on this piece and let's work on this piece for the next 3 months. Okay. So that sort of outside person coming in and talking to you about what they see, but also you being able to reflect for yourself. How does this feel to me? Does this feel like something I can go after? If you feel overwhelmed, you consistently feel overwhelmed. You consistently actually feel a little irritated and irritable and annoyed, you gotta pay attention to that. You're telling yourself something. And maybe it's your life partner, like I said, your coach, maybe it's your adult children, maybe it's a colleague, a great friend who's like, I know you, and you don't really get this way around your goals. Like you're annoyed all the time about this.
Mm.
Okay, so that's that self-reflection. Maybe I've bit off more than I can chew. All right. Maybe I do need to chop this thing off a little bit, and this is the one time you do wanna cut it off the knees, and let's go back to, like, what's my goal for the next month?
Right.
Or maybe it's what's my goal for today
Yeah.
or by Friday?
Shorten it down a little bit,
Yeah, yeah,
take smaller bites and just,
right. So
along
that's
the way have little boxes that you check and be like, okay, that supports this supports this.
right,
It's kind of like your support system. I mean, some things you're going to need that support system to carry you sometimes, right? I mean, there's some things in the world of business where it's like without a support system, you can do whatever you need to do, but you just might not make it there because your support system also needs to support the effort,
right,
right? And that's huge
right.
for a lot of industries or, situations where you're up against it with as a team.
Okay, so I don't think we've ever talked about this in the podcast. We probably should talk about this at some point, but this is a really good story. When I was running the Cincinnati Marathon, you were my running partner, and we were running together. You're a lot faster than I am, and you knew my goal was to try to qualify for the Boston Marathon. This is my first marathon. Cincinnati was my first marathon, and if anybody has done Cincinnati, Cincinnati is a lot harder than Boston. Boston is this, elite marathon in the world because you have to qualify for it. It's an air quote hilly race. There's a lot we know hillier races than Boston and
Many.
Cincinnati. Yeah, I probably should not have chosen Cincinnati as my first marathon ever to run. Anyways, I did, and you were my running partner because you could have done your own race, but you decided to run with me because you knew that I wanted to qualify for Boston. And so you were awesome because you were tracking my minutes per mile and you knew what I needed to do to qualify for Boston for my age group at that time. And this is a great example of course, we always use sport because you and I are athletes and where I think my own self has shown up and this is where I've gotten smacked in the face. This is where I've seen myself. Everything about me would show up in all the races I've done over the past 20 plus years. It's some of the hardest work I've ever done in my life is in the world of sports and athletics. And this is a great example of losing all motivation and having a support system. So I lost, what was it, was it 18? I started to slow down. We were running a good pace, and you weren't talking to me at all about the the, um, the pace.
The numbers.
You
Yeah.
were watching your watch, but you and I were just kinda talking
Yeah.
as you do at a marathon and, getting our gels and getting our drinks at the mile, but running, doing well, hit 18, and, if you've ever done a marathon or done any kind of race, with marathons, we will drive the course if we can, ideally ahead of time, and we drove the course the day before, and so the Cincinnati Marathon goes over 2 bridges from Ohio into Kentucky, and then you're in Kentucky for a little bit in Covington, Kentucky, where the Ohio River is there, and then you run back over another bridge back into Ohio, and, we're driving in the car, and you're looking at these bridges, and they don't seem like they're not hills, they don't seem like anything.
They don't seem to have major impact on your situation at
Right.
the moment.
At the moment, as we're driving it.
You're right.
Right. So we are now it's race morning the next day and we're running. It's about mile 18 and I have these 2 bridges I have to go over. And, I think you know about me. You know I'm starting to hurt when I stop talking.
It's awfully quiet.
I get pretty silent, because I'm going within and I'm trying to now pull from within, that grit and tenacity to get it done. And I was worried that I was falling off my pace. And I think I said it to you. So we are now in Kentucky, went over one bridge. We had another bridge to go over, and I thought I was going to die. I was so overwhelmed by the idea of having to run over that blue bridge that goes back into Ohio. And I think I started whimpering because I will do that when things get really hard. I almost, look at that. Let's see that. Isn't that amazing? I'm sorry I'm interrupting this whole story because I look over to the screen for a recording and I see a big thumbs up sign right in front of my face. So I'm not sure what that's about. Anyways, but yes, thumbs up to me for trying to keep on going. So Snoop Dogg says, I'd like to thank me. I'd
Yeah.
like to thank me for all my hard
A
work.
little bit of me.
Like to thank me for how hard it was and for getting through it. But also I have to thank you, Tim, because you were amazing because my motivation was at that point gone. And if you weren't there beside me to give me that support and to motivate me to keep going, and you had said to me, "You can slow down. You've banked some time." Because I went fast enough in the beginning of the race. If you were there with me, I never would have known that, and I probably would have just completely slowed down and stayed slowed down. And you said to me, "You can slow down. You're good. You're good. You've banked some time." And then at the very end, when I did not want to pick it back up, do you remember this?
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
Why don't you tell it?
I said, get going. You got, you need to go now. Right. Like at some point, I think we were less than a mile to the finish and you start doing math and you're figuring, okay, we've got about 3/4 of a mile. We're running probably at that point, like 11s, right? You're not running
I was
fast.
going slow.
You're just trying to get to the end and you're like, okay,
Slow for me. Slow for me.
well,
Yeah.
just slow in general. I
Yeah.
mean, it just is. And at some point, you're just like, okay, if we don't run slightly faster, the clock's gonna beat us, right?
Sarah, I qualified for the Boston Marathon by the skin of my teeth. I did qualify.
Seconds, right? It was less than a minute, I think.
You said to me, "You have to go." And I'm
Yeah,
like, I don't feel like it. This is really hard." I mean, my IT band was killing me.
yeah,
And I remember you saying, "If you wanna you have to go now. Go now."
yeah,
And I went, and you said, "Speed it up." And actually, it was amazing how I was able to find that 5th gear and, sprint to the finish line, and I qualified for the Boston Marathon.
yeah.
So, that's a great example of I had no more internal motivation. I actually didn't have any external motivation. Your motivating me started to wane as I was just started to feel pain, and you just but the support of you pushed me, figuratively speaking, like, it was kind of a kick in the butt to get to that finish line. And gosh, I'll forever be thankful to you for pushing me to do that. So that's a great example of relying on the people around you to be there for you to push you to the finish line.
Yeah.
Okay.
And just knowing that there will be moments in life where we're going to be done as a human, right?
Yeah.
And we're going to need that push and expect it. And hopefully it comes and it's delivered, right? But you don't always know that. So that's part of this mental thing where it's like you hope for that to happen, right?
That's why I think it's so important, like we've gone to watch our friends do the Ironman, when you did the Ironman, when we go to watch our kids, in like 5Ks, running races. That's why it's so important to have someone there. Right? It
Yeah.
does make a
No,
difference to
it's
hear.
100% true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To hear your name being called out, to hear people saying, "Go, you got this." It's like, okay, okay, it helps you just feel that support, and it's so mental.
Yeah.
Almost all of this, 90%, I say, is mental. And it does help to know, "Hey, I got a person out there who's cheering me on." It's like, "You got this, you go." With a podcast is hard. This podcasting is not an easy thing to get into, and it takes grit, it takes resilience, it takes tenacity to stay in the podcasting game. I'm not Joe Rogan. I don't have a, 1%, which I'm going to get to, but right now I don't have it. And it has been hard to keep showing up, not making any money from the podcast. That's going to change. But this has been a labor of love for 4.5 years. I haven't made any money from this. And this has kind of been my marathon of keep going. Should I keep going? I have a clinical practice. Why am I doing this? And I have to remind myself of my why. My why is because 5 years ago, I told myself I wanted to pay it forward because I wanted to give voice and I wanted to speak to the issues that my clients, this is before COVID, my clients were dealing with in my office. And I thought, there's no way that I can bring them together for confidentiality and ethics reasons, but I'm going to take all of the conversations that I have had with clients for 30 years and put them in a podcast and throw out to all of you, give you the good stuff that I have learned um, by listening to people talk about their lives for 3 decades. And I'm going to share with you the skills that I have learned because of the the business I am in, the knowledge I have, the skills I have learned, and I'm going to give it to all of you. And it has been my joy to do that. And it is hard. And it is a slog. And
Right.
ask any podcaster who's been around for more than 5 years, they will all tell you it's a slog. It's a lot of work. And so what is my motivator? My motivator to keep going is people saying, "Hey, I love your podcast. I listened to that episode. Thank you for that. That was so valuable. I haven't heard anybody speak about that before." That's like, okay, okay, I'm good. I'm good. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep going because it is of value to at least one person. So I'm like, all right, all right, all right. I'm going to keep doing
Yeah.
this.
I mean,
I
that's
need to make some
happened.
money at some point doing this, but
Yeah.
it's really the people and the listeners.
Right. And that's how many times does that happen? We get together at a function, right? Like whether
Yeah.
it's a family function or whatever, and it's like somebody will make a mention of, "Oh yeah, I heard you talk about this," and you're like, "I didn't even
I don't remember that
know
because it
that
was so many
you."
episodes back,
Yeah,
right?
well, not even that. It's just like I didn't even know you knew that I had a podcast.
Yeah,
Like you're like,
yeah,
"What?" And you're like,
yeah,
"Oh, I mean, that's happened to me at work where somebody has said something like, 'Oh yeah, I heard your wife talking about this or that.'" And I was like, "Wait, what? Like I didn't know
yeah.
that."
I know, it's the coolest thing. I had somebody in a networking group, um, that I know of, as an acquaintance, and they said, "You popped up on my Apple iTunes as, something I'd wanna listen to." It's probably because I swear the Big Brother is watching all of us. And I said, "Oh, yeah, I have a podcast." She goes, "That's you. So that's you?" I said, "Yeah." She goes, "Oh gosh, I'm gonna listen."
Yeah.
So, I mean, that is really cool. So, all this to say, I mean, we're talking about motivation. We're talking about, intrinsically be motivated. That will wane. The extrinsic motivators, that does wane. So we're giving examples right now of people talking about, I gave the example of running the marathon and you being the extrinsic motivator and how that ebbed and flowed. It was there and then it waned. And then you basically like yelled at me and said, "You better run your ass the finish line if you want to qualify for Boston." So I did. They were talking about the podcast and that it is difficult to stay motivated, with podcasting. Money talks, but that hasn't, for many people, but that hasn't been it for me. What has been motivating for me is people
Hmm?
throwing us bones and saying, "Hey, that's a great podcast. Love what you said. You really helped me there." So there's an extrinsic motivator, and that wanes too. So you have to go back to your why. All right. But let's go back to, as we wrap this up, the practical implications for how you go after those big goals in your life. So let's do a recap. Number one, you got to have structured planning. Number 2, you gotta have those habits in place. Number 3, support systems, they gotta be there too. We just gave lots of examples of support systems. Self-reflection is number 4, so you gotta assess your goals and your strategies. It's okay to change your goals, but just be dialed into you and what's realistic and what's not realistic for you. Seek outside consultation around that if you need help with it, but self reflection is important. And fifth and final is emotion regulation. Really work on those techniques to manage your stress and maintain your mental health. Because let me tell you, your mental health can suffer a bit if you don't stay on top of it. Okay. If you are not managing your stress, which we talked about a couple episodes back, if you are not managing stress and your mental health is being affected, this tells me there's an issue with emotion regulation. You got to get help with it, okay? Because I want you going after your goals. And I also know your motivation is going to wane, but we got to learn how to regulate our emotions. We're hearing about that a lot more today. This is something that it's one of the key parts of of 4 parts of dialectical behavioral therapy. We gotta learn how to regulate our emotions, okay? So if you don't know how to do that, reach out to me. I'd be happy to help you, okay? 'Cause that's something that I do all the time in coaching, all right? Reach out to me no matter where you are in the world. I can work with you. I can coach you up on whatever it is that's happening in your life, and I will teach you the emotion regulation skills, all right? Been doing this for many, many see, look at it. It just look at the doing this for many, many years now. All right. So um, reach out to me. All right. So I'm here. I'm available to you as your life coach. Let's get on a call together. Email me hello@annamarcolin.com. Happy to work with you and get you in my calendar. Okay. So please, once again, subscribe, rate with 5 stars, and review the podcast. It makes
Right.
all the difference in the world. Okay. It helps us. That's one thing you can do. Okay. So it helps us move up in the rankings. It's a really big deal. And we love reading the reviews. Okay. Thank you for listening. And remember, you don't have to be motivated. You could have big goals in your life. You just got to have a plan in place for how you're going to go after your goals. I don't want motivation to be a part of it. You can do whatever it is you really want, almost anything. Okay. Well, maybe not everything, but you can do almost anything you set your mind to. You got to have a plan in place. Know the motivation is going to wane. So when that motivation wanes and it diminishes, go back to your plan and go back to, you know, your habits, your planning, go back to your support people, spend some time reflecting on why you want to do this in first place and regulate those emotions, and you will be able to reach your goals.
Bingo.
Okay, everyone. Mad love to all of you. Until next time.